He slapped divorce papers on the table and said, "You'll be fine. Penny, she deserves half." I laughed, not because it was funny, but because he really thought he could take my empire and hand it to his new wife like a gift. Before we go further, make sure to like, share, and subscribe, because what happens next will make you never underestimate a woman who built everything from nothing. The room was quiet, except for the sound of the pen rolling across the table. Mark, my husband of 10 years, looked confident, almost smug. His new wife, Alicia, stood beside him with her perfect hair, designer bag, and that same smirk I used to wear before I learned what betrayal looks like. She said sweetly, "It's not personal, Penny, it's just the law. I'm his wife now, and everything he owns is ours." I leaned back in my chair, my hands folded calmly. "That's adorable," I said, smiling without warmth. "But tell me something, Alicia. When exactly did you start believing he owned my company?" Her smile faltered. "You're married. What's his is yours, right?" Mark's lawyer coughed awkwardly. He knew what was coming. Because what they didn't know, what no one in that room knew, was that I had quietly transferred ownership of my company 2 years ago. Right after I caught Mark flirting with his assistant. I didn't fight him then. I didn't cry. I didn't even ask why. I just smiled, said nothing, and built a firewall strong enough to make sure no one could ever touch what was mine. "Mark," I said softly, "you remember when you told me I was too emotional to run a company? That business decisions should be left to you?" He nodded, trying to act composed. "Yes, because I what?" I interrupted. "Because I made you rich? Because I turned your $5,000 savings into a $100 million company while you were busy playing golf with investors I found?" Alicia's eyes widened. $100 million? I looked at her. "Oh, didn't he tell you? You didn't just marry a cheater. You married a dependent." The lawyer shifted uncomfortably, and Mark's fake confidence started cracking. I could see the sweat on his neck, his hand trembling slightly as he tried to grab the papers back. "You're bluffing," he said quietly. I tilted my head. "Then go ahead, file it. Let's see what happens when the court asks for ownership documents." The room fell into silence again. Alicia looked confused. Mark looked trapped. And I looked exactly how I felt. Free. Because in that moment, I wasn't the woman who lost her husband. I was the woman who outsmarted him long before he thought of betraying me. But this was only the beginning. They hadn't even seen the real trap yet. The one that would turn their little plan upside down and make the world realize why you should never try to steal from Penny. Mark's face slowly lost its color as he stared at me. For the first time in years, he didn't have the upper hand. I could see his mind racing, trying to figure out if I was bluffing or not. But the thing about Mark was, he never believed I was capable of being one step ahead. He always thought I was just lucky. He cleared his throat and tried to sound calm. "Penny, let's not make this ugly. We can work something out." I smiled faintly. "You made it ugly the day you brought her into our home." Alicia folded her arms. "You're being dramatic. You think you can keep everything? You'll end up with nothing." Her words made me laugh softly. "Nothing? Honey, I built everything you're trying to steal. Every contract, every investor, every product that made this company worth $100 million. My name is behind it all. You're standing on ground I created with my own hands." Mark slammed his palm on the table. "Enough, Penny. I was part of that journey too." I stared straight into his eyes. "Yes, you were. You were the one who spent company funds on business trips that turned out to be vacations with her. You were the one who kept saying women can't lead. You were the one who forgot I was listening when you planned this divorce 6 months ago." His mouth opened slightly, caught off guard. He didn't realize how much I knew. He never noticed the small recording device hidden in his home office, the one I placed right after I found his messages with Alicia. For months, I played the perfect wife. I made breakfast, smiled at his jokes, even congratulated him when he landed fake investors that were actually my team testing his loyalty. Every step he took toward betrayal, I let him. Because I wanted him to dig deep enough that there'd be no way back up. "Do you know why I didn't stop you, Mark?" I asked quietly. He didn't answer. His silence told me everything. "I wanted to see how far greed could take you. I wanted to see if you'd really choose money over the person who made you." Alicia spoke again. her tone sharper this time. You're not making sense. He has rights. He's your husband. I looked at her and smiled, almost kindly. Not anymore. Our prenup was dissolved the day he used company assets for personal use. You should really check the fine print before marrying someone else's mistake. The way her face fell, it was almost satisfying. But I wasn't finished. Mark stood up and tried to sound confident again. I'll find a way around this, Penny. You think you're smarter than me, but this isn't over. I stood too, calm and composed. Oh, I know it's not over. Because tomorrow morning, you'll wake up to headlines saying your accounts have been frozen, your name removed from every contract, and your position terminated from the board. He froze. What did you do? I did what you should have done years ago, I said softly. I protected myself. He blinked rapidly, his pride cracking piece by piece. I could almost hear his confidence collapsing under the weight of his own lies. Before leaving, I leaned closer to him. You taught me how to play dirty, Mark. You just never expected me to play better. And as I walked away, I could hear Alicia whisper, what if she's telling the truth? That was the moment I smiled for real. Because by the time they found out everything was already in my name, it would be too late. But I wasn't finished yet. They thought losing money was their biggest problem. They didn't know what was coming next, the truth that would ruin both of them publicly. The next morning, chaos erupted before I even stepped out of bed. My phone buzzed nonstop. Calls from board members, texts from journalists, even emails from investors demanding answers. Mark's face was plastered across every business news site. CEO exposed for fraud and infidelity. Company files for ownership change. I sat up slowly, took a sip of coffee, and smiled. It was finally happening. The plan I'd built quietly for over a year was unfolding perfectly. See, while Mark was busy showing off his leadership, I had been rewriting the company's structure. Every new patent, every investor deal, every expansion was signed under my newly formed holding company. Mark never noticed, because I made sure every document looked routine. And when he signed them, he unknowingly handed everything over to me. Alicia tried calling me. The first time I ignored it. The second time I answered. Penny, we need to talk, she said, her voice trembling slightly. Talk? I said calmly. You mean negotiate? Because that's the only reason you'd ever call. She sighed, lowering her tone. Look, this is getting out of hand. The media's tearing Mark apart. Can't we just find a peaceful way to end this? I almost laughed. Peaceful? You and Mark dragged me through hell, and now you're asking for peace. I didn't know he'd go this far, she blurted out. He said you didn't care about the business anymore, that you were ready to move on. That's what he wanted you to believe, I said, my voice steady. He was always good at rewriting the truth, but this time I wrote the ending. There was a long silence. I could hear her breathing unevenly. Finally, she whispered, What are you going to do with him? I smiled faintly. Nothing. The world's already doing it for me. By noon, Mark's reputation was in ruins. His accounts were frozen, his investors cut ties, and his phone was confiscated for an official investigation. Every lie, every fake invoice, every hidden deal was exposed. I arrived at the company headquarters around 3 p.m. The building that once echoed with his arrogance now greeted me with respectful silence. As I stepped into the boardroom, everyone stood. Mrs. Hart, one of the senior partners said, The board has voted. You're now the official CEO of Hart Innovations. The words felt surreal for a moment. For years, that title was dangled in front of me as something I could never earn. Now it was mine. As I sat down at the head of the table, I noticed Mark's framed photo on the wall, his confident smirk staring back. I tilted my head slightly and said, Take that down. The assistant nodded immediately, removing it. And just as I was about to start the meeting, my phone buzzed again. This time, it was a message from an unknown number. You think you've won, Penny, but I still have something you don't know about. For a moment, my smile faded. I stared at the screen, reading it twice. Mark was cornered, but he wasn't finished. And for the first time since this all began, I felt a flicker of unease. What could he possibly still have? I stared at the message for a long time, my thumb hovering over the screen. He still had something I didn't know about? What could it be? I refused to show fear. I had come too far, sacrificed too much. Mark had lost his company, his name, and his influence. Whatever card he thought he was holding, it couldn't undo everything I'd built. Still, a part of me knew him too well. Mark never bluffed. By evening, I got another message. This time it wasn't a threat. It was a video, just 5 seconds long. The thumbnail showed my younger sister, Ava. My heart skipped. I hadn't spoken to Ava in years. Not since she disappeared after getting involved in one of Mark's side ventures. I tapped play. The video was blurry, clearly recorded from an old security camera. Ava was sitting in a warehouse talking to Mark. I couldn't hear the audio, but I could see her handing him a folder, then pointing at something, almost pleading. He grabbed her wrist. She tried to pull away. Then the footage cut off. A single text followed. "You took my company. I'll take your blood." My hands went cold. For the first time in years, I wasn't thinking about business or revenge or control. I was thinking about my sister. I called Detective Reed, the same officer who'd helped me trace Mark's financial crimes. He picked up on the first ring. "Penny, I was about to call you," he said quickly. "We found something strange while going through Mark's offshore records. A private property, an abandoned factory outside town. It's in his name, but no transactions for the past 3 years." My throat tightened. "Send me the address." He hesitated. "Penny, don't do anything reckless. Let us handle it." But I was already grabbing my coat. "You know me better than that, Reed." The night was cold, rain drumming against the windshield as I drove out of the city. The GPS led me to a decaying industrial area, half the buildings collapsing, no lights for miles. When I reached the old factory, the gate was ajar. I stepped inside, heart pounding, flashlight in hand. The smell of rust and damp metal filled the air. Then I heard it. Footsteps. Slow, heavy. Coming from the far end of the hall. "Penny," Mark's voice echoed, dark and unsteady. "You shouldn't have come here." I turned, and there he was, disheveled, eyes wild, holding that same folder I'd seen in the video. "I told you," he said softly, stepping closer. "You don't know everything." And then from behind him a weak voice whispered, "Penny?" I froze. Ava. She was alive. But she looked terrified. Mark smirked. "You wanted the truth? Here it is. She helped me build everything. And she's the one who betrayed you first." The flashlight trembled in my hand. "You're lying," he laughed. "Am I? Ask her." Ava's eyes filled with tears as she whispered, "I didn't mean to, Penny. I didn't know what he'd do. I was trying to protect you." For a moment, everything blurred. The betrayal, the years of silence, the revenge, the victory. None of it mattered anymore, because now it wasn't just about justice. It was about survival. And as the storm outside roared louder, I realized the real ending hadn't even begun. The silence between us was suffocating. The storm outside crashed against the metal roof, each thunderclap echoing like a countdown. Mark took a step forward, still clutching the folder. "You think you won, Penny? You destroyed me, but you never asked how I built everything in the first place." I kept my flashlight trained on him, my free hand slightly raised toward Ava. "Let her go." "Mark, whatever this is, it ends tonight." He smirked. That same infuriating smile he used when he thought he was still in control. "Oh, it ends tonight," he said, his tone sharp. "But not the way you think." He opened the folder and scattered its contents on the floor. Contracts, signatures, and a photo. A photo of me, standing next to a man I barely remembered. An early investor. "Recognize him?" Mark sneered. "He's the one who funded our startup, and the same man who vanished a year later. Do you know where his money came from?" My breath caught. "What are you talking about?" He stepped closer. "Ava knew. She found out before you did. That investor was laundering money. Through your name. You were his cover. You think I was the villain? I protected you from being destroyed by your own greed." "That's a lie," I said. But my voice shook. He laughed quietly, his expression dark. "No, Penny, you've spent your whole life chasing control. But the truth? You were always part of the mess. Ava sobbed. Stop it, Mark. You used both of us. His hand twitched, and for a second, I saw the madness in his eyes, the kind that comes when a man loses everything. Used you? He spat. No, I built you. Without me, you were nothing. I moved fast. While he shouted, I lunged forward and kicked the folder from his hands. It slid across the wet floor, pages scattering everywhere. Ava ran to me, clinging to my arm. Mark roared and grabbed a metal pipe from the ground, swinging wildly. The first hit missed. The second struck a crate behind me. Sparks flew. Mark, stop! I shouted. It's over. But he didn't stop. He swung again, screaming my name. Then, just as he stepped forward, his foot slipped on the wet concrete. For a moment, everything slowed. He fell backward, the pipe clattering beside him, and hit the ground hard. The echo rang through the empty hall. I froze, staring. He didn't move. Ava gasped, tears streaming down her face. Penny! I walked over slowly, my heart pounding. Mark's eyes were open but empty. The man who had once controlled everything, money, power, people, now lay motionless in the dirt he'd built his empire on. Outside, the storm began to fade. By the time the police arrived, the sky had turned pale gray. They took statements, photos, evidence. And finally, Ava and I were led outside into the morning light. Detective Reed approached quietly. It's over, he said. I nodded, staring at the factory one last time. No, I whispered. It's just done. He looked confused, but I didn't explain. How could I? Revenge had cost me everything. My peace, my trust, my sister's years of silence. And even though I'd won, it didn't feel like victory. Weeks later, I stood in my new office, the same company, but reborn. Ava was there, helping rebuild what we could. We renamed it Heart & Co., not as a legacy of revenge, but as a reminder of everything we survived. Sometimes people think winning means destroying your enemies. But I learned the truth the hard way. Real victory is walking away with your soul still intact. And that's what I finally did.